Miss
Dries, Kaylee Dries.
That's a pretty name, said the man, who had given his name as Lenny. He smiled at her, a flat, forced expression that did not extend beyond the corners of his mouth. His hair was tied back in a dirty blonde ponytail that looked either gelled or filthy, and his forearms were scarred by dark, overly detailed tattoos she would have to stare at to decipher. She was not about to stare.
"Has anyone called for me?" she asked.
His smile vanished. "Why would they call me?"
"I don't mean you personally. I mean, has anyone called the cliff's edge looking for me?"
No calls for you. Hardly anybody calls here, even on a busy day, and we don't have many of those, but maybe with the storm coming we'll get filled up. Kinda looks that way."
"Maybe," Kaylee said. She was perplexed that her source had not made contact or called the motel. He'd gone silent the past 24 hours, and that was troubling. She'd even considered calling off the trip. Driving in yet another storm of the century was not her idea of enjoyable travel. But this story was important, and she wasn't about to let a fading hurricane get in the way. This was the kind of investigative piece Kaylee had imagined herself writing all those years she'd studied journalism. The sort of shocking exposé that would get her boss's notice, and once she had that, the notice of people well outside the little Maine enclaves who read the All Points Bulletin. She was too level-headed to fantasize a Pulitzer, but this could be a step on her way to one. Something she could look back on as the beginning of big things. "Is there any place to eat around here?" Kaylee asked. "I didn't see anything driving in, and I've never been to Lonesome Point before." "What kind of name is that anyway?"
Lenny stared at her a moment. "I'm guessing you're not here to make friends. It was named 'cause it has only one lighthouse, which someone at some point in time thought was lonesome out there all by itself. Get it? It's also 3 miles north. This is unincorporated territory you're in right now, not a lighthouse in sight."
"Thanks for letting me know, Mr.
Winfro, but you can call me Lenny. No reason not to."
"Lenny. I appreciate the information. It's always good to know when you're in unincorporated territory. Now, is there some place to eat? I'd love to grab something before the storm keeps us in completely."
"There's a diner 2 miles back. I'm surprised you didn't see it."
"I may have. I was a little distracted."
"That's dangerous."
"Pardon?"
"Distracted driving," said Lenny.
"Right. Totally. I drove past the only place to eat, and I never saw it."
Lenny smiled and said, "It's not exactly the only place to eat. I could make you something. Got a nice little room in the back, kitchenette and everything." Using his thumb, he pointed toward a door behind him, left ajar just enough to see that it led into a back room. "Old man Drover, that's who owned this place until his tragic death a few months back. He had it built for himself so he wouldn't take up one of the motel rooms. Need 'em for pretty ladies like you."
He grinned, sending a shiver through Kaylee. She thought he looked like a lizard when he smiled. She expected his tongue to dart across the front desk and lick her cheek. She stepped back. "Thanks so much for the offer, Lenny, but I couldn't put you out."
"No trouble at all."
He seemed to be enjoying her discomfort. "I'll be back in an hour, I'd guess. If anyone calls."
"I'll be sure to take a message," he said, leaning back on his stool.
Lenny put his arms over his head, exposing sweat stains in October. It was an unattractive sight, which Kaylee was sure he knew. The front desk clerk at the cliff's edge was someone she wished she'd never met and hoped it was a one-time encounter. "Well, bye then," Kaylee said, dropping the room key in her purse and turning for the door.
"Bye then,"
Lenny said. He watched her hurry outside into the growing darkness, then reached for his cell phone. The package had arrived.